Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to explore a really fascinating, honestly deeply fundamental question about the stories we tell ourselves. Namely, who actually gets to narrate our national history? We're going to be looking at this through the lens of postcolonial studies and the cinematic adaptation of Salman Rushdie's absolutely incredible work, Midnight's Children. If you've ever walked away from school thinking history was just, a dry list of dates and battles, well, prepare to have that completely turned on its head.
So who actually gets to narrate history? It's one of those questions we rarely stop to ask ourselves, right? I mean, we often grow up just assuming history is simply what happened, an undeniable fact. But is it? Is it written by the victors, the powerful, or does it actually include the marginalized? Our source material today immediately destabilizes this whole assumption that history is some objective, complete record. It really forces us to confront the reality that whoever holds the pen, or in this case, the camera, gets to completely shape the truth. Conventionally, history is given to us as this top-down textbook view. It focuses heavily on political leaders, massive wars, governments, and major macro events, presenting the whole shebang as purely objective facts. But the post-colonial perspective totally challenges this. It asks a much harder question. Whose experiences are being left out? It leans hard into the subjective, elevating the memories, the physical bodies, and the everyday identities of the marginalized. It views history not just as a sterile log of recorded events, but as deeply, profoundly lived experiences.
Section 1. One Nation, One Body, the Micro Case Study. Let's move to and see how this builds through our central metaphor.
Consider our main character, Saleem Sinai. He is born at the exact stroke of midnight on August 15, 1947. I want you to really imagine the scene here. Fireworks are going off, massive celebrations are erupting in the streets because this is the literal moment of India's independence. So his birth isn't just a personal milestone, it coincides exactly with the birth of a newly independent nation. And as we move forward in the timeline to the mid-1970s, the political darkness of the emergency, where severe state control and restrictions on freedom completely altered the nation, that trauma directly mirrors the physical traumas in Saleem's own life. Right up to the present day, his fragmented, deeply personal memories represent the fragmented memory of the entire country itself.
I want you to think about your own life for a second. If you sit down and tell the story of your life, are you actually telling the history of your society? It's such a brilliant meta question, and in Saleem's case, the answer is a resounding yes. Political events aren't just distant headlines happening to other people. They are very real experiences that directly alter families, relationships, and identities. This perfectly anchors our understanding that personal history and macro-political history intersect constantly. You and I, we're living through history right now, and our individual stories are a completely valid part of that much larger fabric.
The plot twist as theory, the birth switch.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the ultimate and frankly most consequential hospital mix-up imaginable. Two babies are switched at birth. Saleem is biologically born to a poor family, but is secretly switched and raised in a wealthy, incredibly privileged environment. The other baby, Shiva, is biologically born to that wealthy family, but ends up growing up in devastating poverty. Because of this switch, their biological origins completely contradict their lived realities. This plot twist instantly destroys the old assumption that your identity is solely determined by your biological roots. Identity here is constructed by class, by environment, and by the sheer randomness of historical circumstance.
And that brings us to a massive, absolute game changer of a concept in postcolonial studies: hybridity. Hybridity challenges the old-school assumption that cultures exist as completely pure, isolated bubbles. Instead, it's all about constant interaction and transformation. Because of the birth switch, Saleem and Shiva inhabit a world heavily shaped by both colonial history and deeply rooted Indian traditions. Neither boy is purely rich or purely poor, colonized or free. They constantly cross biological and social boundaries, proving that human identities can rarely, if ever, be reduced to just one neat-low category.
The cultural theorist Homi K. Bhabha actually calls this the third space of identity. Living in this third space means completely escaping those strict biological origins we just talked about. It means you're constantly navigating the tightrope between tradition and modernity, and beautifully merging your own private history with your national history. But the absolutely crucial takeaway here? It's about finding possibility in that in-betweenness. We so often feel this intense pressure to fit ourselves perfectly into one specific box. But being in between cultures or classes isn't a weakness. It's not a loss of authenticity.
For characters like Saleem, it actually becomes a space of immense possibility, power, and connection.
The cultural layer, decolonizing language. Now let's look at how history isn't just about events, but the very words we use to record them. Salman Rushdie coined a completely fantastic term for this cultural mixing: chutnification. I love this. Think about actual Indian chutney for a second. You take these incredibly strong, distinct, raw ingredients like mangoes, heavy spices, and vinegar, and you blend them all together to create an entirely new, incredibly vibrant flavor. That is exactly what postcolonial writers and filmmakers do with the English language. They don't just passively adopt it, they actively transform it. They add their own rich cultural spices.
So how does this actually look and sound when you put it on screen in Midnight's Children? Well, the film chutnifies English by mixing raw Hindi and Urdu expressions directly into the everyday dialogue. It proudly utilizes distinct Indian accents and pronunciations rather than trying to sound artificially British or overly formal. The characters just seamlessly code switch depending on exactly who they're talking to in the moment, and the whole narrative is infused with these incredibly rich Indian oral storytelling traditions and a very specific type of humor. It takes what was once the rigid, untouchable language of the colonizer and fully turns it into a vibrant, undeniable expression of postcolonial Indian identity.
Which prompts a deeply thought-provoking question, doesn't it? When the colonized reshape the colonizer's language to express their own history and their own culture, who ultimately owns that language? It's a pretty powerful realization. The cultural appropriation of English by Indian writers and filmmakers isn't some sort of submission to the past. It is a profound, active reclamation of their own history and identity in the present. Language itself literally becomes a tool of liberation.
The macro conclusion: unreliable narrators. Let's zoom back out.
As it's noted about our main character, his memories are fragmented, highly subjective, and yes, sometimes completely unreliable. History becomes something constructed through narrative. So the crucial point is this: Saleem is fully aware he is telling a story. He doesn't just act like some passive human security camera perfectly reporting history objectively. He remembers, he interprets, he exaggerates, and he reconstructs the past. And honestly, it reminds us that any historical record, no matter how official it looks, is inherently shaped by the mind, the memory, and the biases of the person actually documenting it.
This perfectly reflects theorist Partha Chatterjee's concept of the fragmented nation. Look, a nation is almost never a completely unified, harmonious entity, no matter what a standardized textbook tries to tell you. It is inherently built from deep religious, linguistic, and class divisions. It emerges from these constantly competing visions of what modernity and progress should even look like. A nation is essentially a messy space, where coexistence has to be negotiated every single day through difference. So Saleem's fragmented, chaotic memory isn't a failure to remember accurately. It's actually the most accurate reflection possible of a messy, fragmented country trying to find its footing.
So we are left with this. If a nation is indeed made of countless conflicting stories, competing memories, and overlapping identities, whose truth becomes history? As we've explored today, national history is never just a simple, objective list of facts. It is a constantly shifting, living narrative built by those who find the voice, the language, and the medium to tell it. Thank you so much for diving into this explainer with me today. Keep asking those big questions, challenge the narratives you're handed, and I'll catch you in the next one.